Okay, we are ready to go, and I'm very pleased to welcome everybody here today. We've really got a very full program, so we're going to try and keep on time. But it's a great pleasure to welcome you here today. My name is Cyril Meyerowitz. I'm at the University of Rochester Eastman Institute for Oral Health. I'm the regional director of the Northeast region of the National Dental PBRN. It's a great pleasure, in fact, to have assembled a very interesting group of people here today. We have people really from a broad range, from a lot of communities, people from basic science, people from practitioners, behavioral scientists, clinical investigators. We have people from a lot of different countries as well, so there's a lot of great international representation. All of these people are here, I assume, because they're interested in practice-based research that improves clinical outcomes. So it's a great pleasure to have this group. It did occur to me that we don't have patients here today, but that's for another time. But I think all of us, the patients, are probably in some form or another. Practice-based research really offers opportunities for bidirectional interactions that translate science into practical application in clinical practice. And today's symposium is really about exploring those opportunities and understanding some of the challenges of that setting. I think it's a fascinating setting with interesting questions and interesting study design issues. And if you look at the program, we've tried to incorporate a very broad variety of topic areas so that we can have a discussion about a broad range of topics. So this is sort of a hybrid symposium. It's not so much traditional. We're going to have a symposium part which starts out, and I'll introduce the speakers as they come along, to set the stage for the discussion that takes place at the tables. The tables that all of you are sitting at, and I for those people who are not yet sitting at a table, if there is an open chair, you can read the agenda and try and pick the topic that you like, because there are topics that span the field, bidirectional research, study design in various content areas. There's practitioner research and communications, and there's a global table, one on behavioral science and its application to practice-based research. So at the table discussions, there are going to be some questions that have been suggested. The table leaders, there's a table lead at each table, an expert in the field, who's going to lead the discussion, and we've tried to balance the tables so we have people from very different communities of interest to encourage a discussion that goes across a lot of different cultures and a lot of different groups. After the table discussion, we're going to have a panel discussion which is going to be up front here, where the table leaders will report out on the discussion that's taken place. And so hopefully it'll give everybody an opportunity to get a flavor for what the questions are like. I think we recognize that in these small discussions, we have sort of broad-ranging discussions. Our hope is to take away from these tables, which are also co-facilitated by people within the practice-based research network community, to take away a few positive suggestions about the topic areas that they're in. So if we go away with one or two positive suggestions about the way we can actually look at this field and improve it, then I think we've accomplished something very good. I think you all know that, by the way, I'd like you to hold your questions until the panel discussion, because we've got so if you have a question, write it down, and during the panel discussion, you can have an opportunity to ask it. As you might know, the National Institute for Dental and Craniofacial Research, NIDCR, has made significant investments and commitments to practice-based research and funds the National Dental Practice-Based Research Network. It's therefore a great pleasure to have our first speaker, Martha Somerman, the director of NIDCR, to welcome you all and to set the stage for the symposium.
Well, as we're getting this set up, just welcome everybody, and I apologize. The reason why we're running a little late is I can't read directions, so I went to Hall A rather than Ballroom A. How many other people did that? Hey! So, greetings. everybody. I know there's a great speakers here, and I was allowed 5 minutes. I said, can you give me 10 minutes? Because I get very excited about the practice-based networks and what's going on here. First of all, I'd like to thank Dr. Meyerowitz. Cyril is what I call him, so it's easier for me, Meyerowitz. For his relentless putting us to task almost every day getting this symposium together. So really special thanks for him for his efforts on that. So let's give him a cheer. And for all the other people joining me, and of course Greg, special thanks there. Also, I want to call out to the global table, because this is when we were putting this practice-based research network symposium together. One of the things that I happened to be visiting in Brazil, and I met a faculty person there who I think is right there, who said, we want to do something like this. And so it's because of your interactions with me that, and then it was one table, and I think they're now, we're the globals. Global teams go, so there are 2 tables now that are involved in that. So thank you for that. So the practice-based network, maybe one other story about this. So I was very fortunate. I've been involved in the second phase. The first phase is the brainchild of all the incredible staff at NIDCR. I'm very humbled to be the director. It's the staff that do everything and have the brains behind this, and I just get to say what you do. But I was involved with the practice-based research networks when I was at the University of Washington. And when you initially wrote these proposals, I said, how do you write something about this? And I saw our head of that was Tim DeRoon at the time. He had hypothesis, he had specific aims, and I never saw such energy of the dental community and the dentists involved in the practice-based network. So I got it, it works. And the major goal here is the importance to the practitioners, to the patients, and the outcome. Plus recognizing that we need to move science into the clinics. And while that basic science part will always be our bread and butter, there's also a need to move it in more quickly than we do at this time as well, but the practice-based networks keep moving it along. But one aspect that I think, so now it's one directional. We're getting from the basic to the translational to the clinical. What we need, and I would need from the dental communities and those of the dentists involved in outside practice, as well as the dental hygienists, the lab technicians, the research, all researchers, is the bidirectional. And the bidirectional is moving it from your practice and the new information that's going on, that you see a patient that responds differently, whether it's positive or negatively, getting that back to the basic scientists. Let me give you one beautiful example. So this is in the oldest practice-based network, where there was reports of this osteonecrosis of the jaw, and and the drug companies are saying, oh, no, this is because of these patients that are taking other medications. It has nothing to do with the bisphosphonates. Sure enough, as you can see from this study, it was recognized that, in fact, the bisphosphonates are a risk factor while it's related to high dose and other issues. But then, why? And so this is a beautiful bidirectional example that I think could have happened more rapidly if some of the dentists in the community knew where to contact the researchers, but NIDCR did. And so we said, we need to develop models. We need to understand why osteonecrosis of the jaw versus other tissues of the body. And so we funded studies in this, developing rat models. The rat models look very similar to the human models. But bottom line, recognizing through these models, still not total understanding of what's going on here, but it's tied into infection, it's tied into extractions, and increased immune compromised systems. So another thing that came out of this is that vitamin D deficiency may also be a risk factor. So a lot of moving from the clinical to the basic science. The money that we put into this on the global basis was about 9.9 million over 7 years last go around, and 9.6 million this go around, with a much more. Last time we had about 40 studies. Now we're planning on 20 total studies, very focused, with larger, more careful analysis of the data than the first. Not that the first one wasn't great, it's just that more structure to the second one, lessons learned. So we had a lot of practitioners in the first part, many subjects, enabling you to do evidence-based science here. And lots of publications, important to the practice, important to our patients. You're going to see this slide again, but this is fast forward. In the first rendition, there were 3 different independent groups with some collaboration, some conversation. Now we have a central hub with 6 regional areas, and Dr. Greg Gilbert's going to be talking about this more. But the model seems to be working beautifully, and while some of these numbers are smaller than others, every single state has practitioners that are involved. I think that's incredible. I think that gives credibility to the dentists in the community, to Dr. Greg Gilbert and his efforts, and also our staff as well. One of the interesting things is to watch the growth. So the blue is the dentist, the red is the dental hygienist, and also the non-practitioners. And who are those non-practitioners? There are students, there are lab techs, there are staffers, there are investigators, there are researchers. And it's very interesting that that group appears to be growing more rapidly than the others, but we're still on a steady, rapid curve, so there's still a lot of interest. I love the enthusiasm. So, giving you an example of some of the studies that are going on in the practice-based network. So, all of us, and I know when I was more actively practicing than now, and even I have friends that have this pain, they don't know what it is, they say they have cracked tooth syndrome, and so one of this is getting this registry, a very important study. Then decision aids that affect suspicious occlusal carious lesions. So what are the devices? Do the devices that are being used influence your decisions and what you're going to do? And then dental hypersensitivity, the evaluation of that treatment over an 8-week period. And then the single unit crowns. What are the criteria for success? Are there any specific things that are being used that predict success more than others? And stay tuned for some things that are going to be released. And I heard some more excitement about some of these at a symposium I was at. So one is the anterior open bite decisions on how to treat, and then 1-year outcome. But one that was very, so I went to an HPV oral cancer symposium this morning looking at biomarkers, and this is an HPV 16 screening to see how its feasibility and acceptability. And then in the end of 2015, looking at oral cancers and when decisions to refer, as well as the dental information networks and how we gain information from each other. And so these are very exciting things, very promising directions. I can't tell you how excited I am about this, how excited I am about. I was looking forward to this, even though I got lost all week. So thank you, and thank you for your participation.